Oh my god. This is honestly mind-blowing news. I can tell you this honestly, I woke up to this news. I literally woke up, the first thing on my phone, I see Chris Paul traded to the Houston Rockets. And I'm just like, oh my god, this actually happened. And I spent all day watching ESPN, watching NBA TV, just getting the information on my head about what the hell just happened. And honestly, when I first heard of this trade, I was a little bit confused. I was confused in the sense that I didn't understand why this happened. Why this Chris Paul didn't just sign with them in the offseason when he could have become a free agent. But then I looked a little bit deeper. This trade is a very confusing trade at the moment because we don't really understand how this will all play out. However, I'm going to do my best to sort of explain this. So basically, what had happened is that the Clippers and Chris Paul were meeting up. They said, you know what, what's the future plan here? And Chris Paul said that, well, a destination that I want to go to is either San Antonio or Houston. And the Clippers were like, okay, well, we don't want to lose you for nothing. So instead, how about we send you to Houston now? We send you to Houston. You opt in to your final year of your contract. You play your contract out in Houston. So we can send you to Houston. We can also get an assets back for you. And we can both part our ways in a very professional manner. And Chris Paul said, fine. Because he's also able to sign a supermax contract with the Rockets as a member of the Rockets. So from that point of view, Chris Paul is still going to get paid his money. At the same time, he's going to go to the destination that he wanted to go to. So for both sides, this seemed like a very good win-win situation. So now this leads into two sides of this. There's two sides to this, really. First of all, for the Clippers, unfortunately, this basically spells the end of winning basketball in LA. I'm sorry, Chris Paul was the engine of that team, and now that the engine is now gone, there is really no sense in trying to contend at this point. And the players that they got back, Patrick Beverley, the solid player, Lou Williams, he's the next Jamal Crawford in my opinion. Montrezl Harrell, solid young big. Sam Dekker, solid young wing. They got some quality pieces back for them, but they're not going to be playing winning basketball anytime soon. And if I'm the LA Clippers, I'm going to see this as, you know what? If we gave up Chris, it's time to give up Blake as well. We have to rebuild here. And I think that's the best thing. I think the Clippers' next move is to sign and trade Blake Griffin, hopefully get some draft picks. If I'm the Clippers, I would sign and trade Blake Griffin with the Boston Celtics. See if you can get some quality asset in a pick or some young quality players to get onto your team, because that's the only way you're going to rebuild, and that's the best way to jumpstart that rebuilding process. So that's basically all I can say about the Clippers. But my main focus is on the Houston Rockets. Now, on paper, you see James Harden, Chris Paul, you say, wow, that looks impressive. However, when you dive a little bit deeper to that, you say, wait a minute, how will these two guys play together? James Harden, a ball-dominant guard, a guard who needs the ball in his hands to be successful. He came off of his best season playing point guard. And now you go out and you get Chris Paul to add on to that. Another player who plays point guard, who is a ball-dominant player. So it leaves the question in my head. When I first saw this trade, I was like, wait a minute. What? How do these two players complement each other? How does Chris Paul and James Harden fit with each other? And personally, I really don't know how this can work out. I've thought of a couple of scenarios, but I haven't really figured out an exact way as to how this trade would work out and benefit James Harden and Chris Paul. Because now it's going to force both players to play an undercut role. Now, as I respect Chris Paul, I really love his game, and I love the fact that he's adapting. He can adapt to situations. He adapted to when Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan were on that team. He adapted to playing alongside those two, and that means he can also adapt to playing alongside James Harden. And I think this can also be a great thing, but it can also be a bad thing. Now, first of all, this could go very, very bad for the Houston Rockets because, James and Chris, they may not be eye to eye, they may struggle, they may not be as successful as we all feel, and then Chris Paul ends up leaving in free agency the next year. That is the worst case scenario that could happen out of this. However, the potential for this to be successful is actually very high, as James Harden and Chris Paul, both very high IQ players, they're players who both want to win, and when superstar players come together, they generally figure out a way to play with each other. And I think this can be great for both of them if they can do it. Now, this will result in one of these guys sacrificing the ball handling duties. And I think the guy who should do it is James Harden. Because what we saw last year in the playoffs is that James Harden, he literally burnt out at the last game of the Rockets postseason. He burnt out. He literally had no energy in the tank to play another game and lead the team and do everything for his team. So this is why the Rockets said, you know what, we're going to take one responsibility away from you. We just want you to score the basketball for us. We don't need you to do anything else. We will get another guy to do that role for you so that you won't be expending as much energy as you did last season. Now sure, James Harden had his best statistical season, but it doesn't make any sense if the team isn't winning, the team isn't advancing far in the playoffs. So therefore, they got Chris Paul, and I think Chris Paul should be the primary ball handler of this team. Why? Because it allows him to play, James Harden to play and not get burnt out, because all you'll be responsible for is scoring the basketball. So I think that will be a great role for James Harden to play in. And I also think this is great for Chris Paul, as Chris Paul is in a situation where he's very injury prone in his career. And the reason why he's been injury prone is because he's been playing so many minutes in LA, and he has been the engine of the Clippers. Without him on the floor, the Clippers are really, really bad without him. And why? Because he does so much for the Clippers, offensively and defensively. And because he's expending that much energy, he can't always be healthy on the floor. And that's the biggest problem with Chris Paul at this point. And since he's being paired to James Harden, I think this will help him, as now he doesn't have to be doing as much. He doesn't have to be running the show as much. He can, take a few plays off. He can let James Harden bring up the ball a few times. He can let James Harden make a play, while Chris Paul relaxes and rests in the corner or rests along the perimeter. So I think this can be very positive for both sides. I think these guys can play with each other. I think the potential for this to be successful is there. So from that point of view, I like what the Houston Rockets did here. The second thing I like from what the Houston Rockets did is financially, as this is very interesting, as Chris Paul, he could have easily signed with the Rockets as a free agent, but instead, the Rockets were smart here. They said, you know what, if we sign Chris Paul, we are going to be so limited as to what free agents we can sign this offseason. And the Rockets are going all in. They're throwing all their chips on the table saying, we're going all in. And now, they need every single penny that's in their pocket in order to sign quality free agents, in order to get some better pieces around James Harden. So by saving money, by not signing Chris Paul, by keeping him on a relatively average deal as far as the cap, they're able to sign another marquee free agent and get more cap room in order to sign more free agents. From that point of view, I love this trade, because I love how Houston was able to maneuver this in a way that not only are they able to get Chris Paul, but they can also add a Paul George. They can also go out and sign a Carmelo Anthony if he gets bought out. So the potential for this one trade to turn into more assets in the future is very, very high. And from that point of view, again, I love what Houston did here, because that's smart thinking, that is future thinking, and that's also very, very, very good for this franchise. So from that point of view, I love this trade. Now finally, the last thing I want to say about this trade that I really just didn't like for the Houston Rockets was the fact that they had to give up a lot of players in order to do this. Now I get it, Chris Paul is a superstar. I get that his value is so high that the Clippers asked for a lot of players, and it makes sense. You're trading away your franchise player, your best player on your team, and you're trading him away. So you need to get a quality return for that player. However, I feel that Houston really, really gave up a lot of players who they could have used, which has now depleted their bench. And I'm very, very concerned about that. Like, first of all, Patrick Beverley. He is such a good defender. He's a solid defender, and I really think that was hoping that Houston would keep him, even if they got Chris Paul. Keep Patrick as a backup, because then you'd have one of the best backups point guards in the NBA playing for your team. And I thought that would have been a genius move if Houston was able to maneuver it. However, Beverly's so sought after that he had to be put into this Chris Paul deal. Another guy who I felt that shouldn't have been traded was Lou Williams. Lou Williams was a guy who perfectly fit your system. He's someone who literally, when he was traded at the trade deadline, was plugged in the Mike D'Antoni system, and he made the team better. Why? Because he perfectly fit that system. He was such a great fit for that Mike D'Antoni offense that there was no hiccup. As soon as he got to Houston, I think he dropped like 30 points in his first game. Why? Because that's the role that's the way Lou Williams likes to play, and he loved it in Houston. And I felt that the smart move was to keep him, because it's just like in the Clippers. Why haven't they gotten rid of Jamal Crawford yet? Because you always need a spark plug off your bench. If he fits your system, you need to keep him, because there's not a lot of players who can just come in and automatically fit your system and is willing to buy in and loves the way you play. That's what, boggled my mind, was the fact that why would you trade this guy away? He could be so valuable to you. And I just feel that Houston really just jumped the gun here. And I honestly feel bad for Lou Williams, because out of all the times this dude has been very valuable to his team, but at the same time, he's literally just been traded from team after team after team. So from that point of view, I didn't like that. Other than that, those two are probably the bigger ones that I did not like. But in total, they gave up 7 players. 3 of them they had to sign in order to match salary. So I really felt that Houston really gave up a lot of players in this deal, and I felt that this could be the deciding factor, whether Houston can seriously make this into a thing, because their bench is very, very depleted now, and I'm very concerned as to what they can do from this. So overall, I don't know what to think about this trade. On one hand, I like that the Clippers are finally going into the rebuilding phase. I hope that they can get rid of Blake, get some assets for him, and rebuild. I like that idea. I like the Clippers saying, you know what, we're resetting. This big three did not work out. On the other hand, I also like how Houston made a big move, got Chris Paul, and has the potential to be something great with James Harden. I also like how they did it in a non-financially constricting way, where they were able to trade for Chris Paul, get him on a relatively average deal, but also have the cap flexibility to sign other free agents as well. So I really like that. However, I'm very concerned at the fact that how the two players, James and Chris, will mesh together, and B, how their bench will fare. Those are my 2 concerns leading into this upcoming season. But overall, this was a big move. This was a big trade. I'm excited because I was a big fan of the Houston Rockets last year, and I'm excited to watch more of the Houston Rockets and see what this new duo or potential new big three in Houston could be if things all work out for the Houston Rockets. So we'll stay tuned. We'll see what happens, and big things are happening, man.